We all like to think we're seekers of truth, that if we were offered a choice, we'd pick the harsh reality over a comfortable lie every single time. But imagine this for a moment. You spent your entire life chained in a dark cave, facing a wall. The only reality you've ever known is a parade of shadows, flickering across the stone in front of you. It's predictable. It's simple. It's your entire world. Then one day, someone breaks your chains and forces you to turn around. You're dragged out of the cave and into the light. But this isn't a moment of triumph. It's agony. The sun is a searing, blinding pain in your eyes. The real world isn't beautiful. It's a chaotic, terrifying mess of shapes and dimensions you can't comprehend. Your first instinct isn't to rejoice. It's to recoil, to shield your eyes, to scramble back to the only place that ever made sense. The darkness. That immediate, desperate urge to retreat from the truth and find comfort back in the shadows of the cave. What if that isn't just an ancient metaphor? What if that single painful moment of disorientation is the key to understanding one of the most profound and difficult journeys in human history? Okay, so let's unpack this. What we're diving into today is, well, it's a really fascinating concept for modern psychology. It gives us this powerful lens, to understand that painful moment of disorientation we just talked about.
Right.
It's really about how our fundamental beliefs, the stuff we think about ourselves and our abilities, how that actually shapes our entire reality, and how that discomfort, that feeling psychologists sometimes call cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that clash.
Exactly, that uneasy feeling when what we believe bumps up against new information.
Yeah.
How that influences our relationships, our careers, even just how we handle everyday challenges.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how these deep-seated assumptions, these stories we tell ourselves can either, keep us confined, keep us in that limited, predictable cave, a world sort of defined by what others put into our minds, making us just spectators.
Watching the shadows.
Watching the shadows, yeah. Instead of being like recreators of our own reality. Or these same assumptions can actually propel us out into a world of continuous growth, of self-realization. So this deep dive, we're going to explore how facing big things like systemic issues and really pursuing self-determination, how that mirrors this individual journey, this move from, let's say, societal illusions to a more complex, maybe harder truth. It's about realizing that our engagement with the world isn't just about passively receiving stuff. It's about actively creating, transforming. And ultimately, we'll dig into how we can cultivate the thinking that prepares us to embrace this often, disorienting, but ultimately liberating truth.
Getting us out of those comfortable lines.
And into the full complex light of reality.
Yeah.
Even if it hurts your eyes at first.
So what does this all mean for us, practically speaking? It turns out a lot of this journey, this choice, retreating to the shadows or stepping into the light, it hinges on our mindset.
That's right.
It's about these two really different ways of looking at your core qualities. Things like your intelligence, your personality. Do you see them as, set in stone? Like a talent you either have or you don't?
Like it's fixed.
Right? Fixed.
Yeah.
Or do you see them as something you can actually grow, something you can develop over time with effort?
We've definitely observed two distinct patterns in how people approach this. One is that deeply ingrained belief that our qualities are carved in stone, what we call a fixed mindset.
Okay.
And this implies a static self, right? Intelligence, talent, personality traits. They're just inherent attributes that can't really change much. And if you believe that, then life kind of becomes this series of tests.
Tests?
Yeah, tests to prove what you already are rather than seeing it as a chance to become something more.
Gotcha.
And the other belief, that's the idea that our basic qualities are things we can cultivate, we can develop them through our efforts, and that's what we call a growth mindset.
Right.
And from that perspective, potential isn't some fixed state. It's an unfolding process. Dedication, hard work, they can genuinely transform your capabilities and lead to, continuous improvement.
And these two mindsets, they lead to completely different ways of living, don't they? Like for someone operating from that fixed mindset, their main goal isn't really learning, is it?
Not primarily, no.
It's more about constantly proving the intelligence or talent they think they already have. They want to look smart, and this seems key, avoid mistakes. Like at all costs.
Absolutely. Which often leads to this sort of defensive posture. Challenges aren't opportunities. They're seen as potential public exposures of, their inadequacy.
Ouch.
Yeah. And in studies, when kids with this mindset were given hard puzzles, some reacted with immediate frustration, confusion, even defensiveness. They'd say things like, what is there to do?
As if the problem itself is proof they can't solve it.
Exactly. Like the existence of a hard problem automatically signals an unresolvable barrier to their intelligence and mistakes. They aren't learning opportunities for them. They're direct, glaring evidence of inadequacy.
It's like a permanent brand.
Permanent brand, yeah. Something that sends them scrambling right back to the safety, the perceived safety of the shadows, precisely. And in that framework, even effort itself is often seen negatively. It's like a sign of low ability, something only people who lack innate talent actually need.
So trying hard means you're not smart.
That's the hidden belief, yeah. They might internalize sayings like, if at first you don't succeed, you probably don't have the ability, which of course becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
And this belief system, it naturally leads to significant risk avoidance. Their unspoken motto kind of becomes, nothing ventured, nothing lost. They'd rather just sidestep challenges that might expose their perceived limits.
Because their self-worth is all tied up in this image.
This unblemished image of their fixed abilities, yeah. They are, in a way, refusing to turn around and face the light. They prefer those comfortable, predictable shadows of what they already know they can do.
But then you have the growth mindset people.
Yeah.
And they're almost a mirror opposite, aren't they?
Pretty much, yeah.
Their core belief is that qualities, even ones that seem innate, like talent, they can actually be developed through dedication, hard work, continuous learning. So their goal isn't proving how smart they are right now. It's about learning and improving, stretching themselves, continuously growing. That sounds a lot more like actively participating with the world, doesn't it? Not just watching it.
It absolutely does, yeah.
Like stepping out of the shadows and embracing that vibrant, maybe sometimes messy reality.
It is. When kids with a growth mindset tackled those same hard puzzles, they didn't recoil. They actually showed excitement. You'd hear them say things like, I'm dying to figure them out.
Wow, really? Excitement?
Yeah. They embraced the challenge as an opportunity to get smarter. They saw it as a path to expanding their capability, not some judgment on their existing talent.
Hey.
And their perception of effort is completely different, too. For them, effort is what ignites ability. It turns it into accomplishment. They get that Rome wasn't built in a day, Persistence is key.
So effort is the hero, not the villain.
Exactly. And for them, challenge and risk aren't threats. They're fundamental opportunities for learning and growth. They don't see a problem as some fixed limit situation, that philosophical idea of a barrier that seems impossible to overcome.
Right.
They see it more as an untested feasibility, something that can be overcome through effort and critical thought. They understand that reality isn't static, it's fluid. It can be shaped by what they do. #22. The illusion of fixed potential and innate talent.
That really paints a clear picture of the two mindsets. But, listening to this, it just naturally makes me wonder, what does this mean for how we think about potential itself? Like, can we actually know a person's potential right now? Or is it this ever-unfolding story?
That's a huge question.
Because we tell ourselves all the time that some people are just naturals, right? That greatness is just inherent gifts. And maybe that's a comforting thought. Because it explains why some people do amazing things and others don't, without us having to look too closely at the messy, often uncomfortable role of just grinding it out.
Yeah, the sheer effort involved.
It's like another one of those comforting shadows on the wall of our collective cave, isn't it? This idea of the natural.
You're absolutely right to wonder about that. This whole notion of innate, fixed potential. It's a really pervasive societal illusion. It's a powerful shadow on that cave wall that we've just sort of accepted as reality. But what's truly illuminating, I think, is how history itself just keeps showing us examples that completely defy that narrow view. History demonstrates again and again that a person's true potential is largely unknown. It's unknowable, really. It's impossible to foresee what someone can accomplish with years of, passion, toil, and training.
We're often blind to that possibility of real transformation.
Totally blind. We prefer the simple story.
Think about it, right? Many historical figures we totally revere now. They were considered pretty ordinary kids, not precocious geniuses at all. Charles Darwin, the guy who revolutionized biology.
Not marked for greatness early on.
Or Leo Tolstoy, one of the greatest novelists ever. They weren't showing obvious signs of their later brilliance as kids. And in sports, Ben Hogan, considered maybe the greatest golfer ever in terms of ball striking. famously uncoordinated, even graceless as a child.
He wasn't born a natural.
No, he became one through just sheer relentless dedication.
Indeed. And it's the same story in the arts, where we really love to romanticize the born genius, Cindy Sherman, a hugely influential 20th century artist. She actually failed her first photography course.
No way.
Yes. And Geraldine Page, an actress known for incredible depth and range, she was literally advised to give up acting entirely because she supposedly had a lack of talent.
That's brutal.
It is. Or look at Paul Cézanne's early paintings. He's this pivotal figure, right? Laid the groundwork for modern art. Some of his early stuff was, well, pretty bad, frankly.
Oh.
It took time, immense effort, dedication for Cézanne to become the Cézanne we know. He was constantly pushing past his initial limitations. And Jackson Pollock, another giant revolutionized abstract expressionism, also described as having little native talent for art early on.
So where did the greatness come from?
It stemmed not from some magical innate gift, but from his revolutionary approach and just immense dedicated effort in finding his unique voice. It was work.
It's incredible how easily we build up and cling to this myth of the natural. Thomas Edison, for example, we picture him like alone, bathed in light.
The light bulb moment.
Right, the aha moment, single-handedly inventing the light bulb. But as biographer points out, he wasn't always a genius. He was actually a really savvy entrepreneur who oversaw a whole team of diverse experts.
Right, it wasn't just him.
No. The light bulb itself was a network of time-consuming inventions. It involved chemists, mathematicians, physicists, engineers, glassblowers. Painstaking contributions from many people. It wasn't one flash of genius. It was sustained collective effort that brought it to life.
And this pattern, it just keeps going, even with the most celebrated athletes. Muhammad Ali, seen as this physical marvel, unparalleled speed, agility. But experts initially criticized his technique, his physique.
My golly.
Yeah, they completely missed his incredible mind, his character, his strategic brilliance, his mental toughness. And Michael Jordan, often called Superman, right?
Yeah.
Seemed effortless.
Totally.
Famously taught from his high school varsity team, he was known inside the game as the hardest working athlete, not just a natural. He himself said mental strength, character.
Yeah.
That's way stronger than just physical gifts. He knew his growth mindset was his real superpower.
Even Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
We picture him as this larger-than-life guy indulging, but he wasn't just a natural hitter.
Not at all.
He put in intense effort, serious off-season training to become that legendary slugger. The guy loved to practice, constantly refining his swing, his approach.
And Willie Mays, one of baseball's all-time greats, the say hey kid, he languished in the minors for 8.5 years.
1.5 years.
Yeah, his manager called it a 7.5-year slump. It took a specific batting suggestion and then just relentless practice for him to transform into an MVP, breaking records. The natural talent was there, sure, but it took immense focused work to unlock it.
So this huge list of examples really shows us it isn't just that effort matters. We kind of knew that.
Right.
That's not the shocker.
The deeper thing is how deeply ingrained our societal story about natural talent really is, and how that story actively keeps us chained up in our own mental caves. It blinds us to our true, malleable potential.
Exactly. There's this powerful cultural tendency, this deep-seated illusion to revere the naturals. We see champions as superheroes born different. We ignore the immense, often painful effort and development that made them extraordinary, which makes their success seem less attainable for the rest of us.
Precisely. Because it suggests if you weren't born with it, well, you can't achieve it. It's not just about individual psychology. It's a massive societal illusion we have to consciously take apart if we want to truly become more of who we can be.
Moving past that comfortable lie.
That being is better than becoming.
Yeah. We have to embrace the becoming. #33. Identity formation and the psychology of failure and effort.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, especially tying it back to that painful moment of clarity, that disorientation from the opening. If our self-worth is all tangled up with a fixed identity, what happens to our sense of self when we fail? It's that jarring confrontation, isn't it, with a reality that just doesn't match our self-image. And it often sends us scrambling right back to the safety or the perceived safety of the shadows.
It absolutely is. And this raises a huge question about how we actually define ourselves. In a fixed mindset, failure gets transformed. It goes from being an action, I failed, into a deeply personal, often debilitating identity. I am a failure.
That's a heavy shift.
It's incredibly damaging. It fosters this profound fear of failure that often leads to what we call non-learning. People stuck in this mindset get so afraid of stepping out of the shadows of their perceived competence.
You just stop trying new things. They actively avoid any experience that might challenge that illusion, yeah. Even if it means missing out on crucial growth opportunities.
Wow. And you mentioned praise earlier. How praising intelligence can backfire. That seems so counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But psychological studies have shown exactly that. Praising a child's intelligence, telling them you're so smart, rather than praising their effort, can surprisingly lower their IQ scores later, and it makes them less willing to take on challenges.
How so?
Well, for example, some kids praised for being smart when given a choice consistently chose easier puzzles. Why? They wanted to protect that smart label.
Didn't want to risk looking not smart.
Exactly. And when the puzzles did get harder, they showed a big plunge in enjoyment. Some even fibbed about their scores or said they didn't want to take the puzzles home, they couldn't run away fast enough.
And this isn't just kids, right?
Oh no, this aversion to difficulty isn't limited to young children. We've seen a very similar pattern in college students. There was one student, brilliant guy, consistently praised for his intelligence his whole life. He developed an intense aversion to difficult challenges.
What would he do?
He'd either just outright avoid tasks, or if he couldn't, he'd treat them with contempt if he couldn't nail them right away. Students with a fixed mindset, because they fear exposing deficiencies, will actively sacrifice long-term learning.
Like choosing an easier class.
Yeah, like opting out of a really beneficial but challenging English course that would demonstrably improve their college careers, just to feel smart in the short run. This makes them non-learners. They suspend judgment, critical thinking, just to maintain this illusion of competence. They prefer the comfortable shadows of what they already know.
That fear. The fear of trying your absolute hardest and still failing.
Yeah.
That sounds like the ultimate nightmare in the fixed mindset.
It really is, because it robs you of all excuses.
Right. You can't say, oh, I could have been a great violinist if I'd really tried, if you did try your absolute hardest and it wasn't enough.
Exactly. Nadja Salerno-Sonnenberg, the violin prodigy. She was paralyzed by this exact fear. She actually stopped bringing her violin to lessons for a while.
Because she was afraid of that moment.
Afraid of that I gave it my all and it wasn't good enough moment.
Yeah.
It would have shattered her identity as this naturally gifted musician. It took her legendary teacher, Dorothy DeLay, having a very direct confrontation with her to break through that paralysis.
Wow. And when setbacks do happen, how do people with fixed mindsets typically cope?
Well, our studies consistently show they experience much higher levels of depression. They tend to ruminate over problems, just replay them endlessly. They torment themselves with thoughts like, you're such a dope, or this made me less of a man.
So the failures aren't just events.
No, they become these self-labeling moments that define and limit them. There's no perceived way forward, no route to success. They feel stuck, frozen by the shadows.
But in stark contrast, the growth-minded individuals.
Totally different response. Think of Elizabeth, the gymnast we studied. When she had a disappointing performance, she didn't despair. She analyzed her performance, worked on perfecting her routines, practiced her weaknesses.
And her father helped.
Crucially, yes. He didn't give her what we called a phony boost, oh, you were robbed, or blame the judges. He sympathized with her feelings, absolutely, but then he taught her how to learn from the failure. He actually told her she didn't deserve to win that day.
Tough love.
A bit, but then he helped her understand why and what she needed to do to improve. And that approach led her to achieve widespread success later on, because she saw the setback as a temporary hurdle, information, not a permanent judgment on her worth.
And we see this mindset pushing people beyond the possible in some really inspiring ways, don't we?
We really do. Think of Christopher Reeve, completely paralyzed after that devastating horseback riding accident. Doctors give him basically no hope of recovery.
Right, a fixed diagnosis.
Exactly. But he defied those medical predictions. He committed himself to this incredibly intensive exercise program. He was fueled by this profound question. Why couldn't he learn to move again? Even when doctors warned him, he was just in denial.
He refused the fixed label.
He refused it. He focused relentlessly on effort, on potential, not on his fixed condition. And 5 years later, incredibly, he started regaining movement in his fingers, his legs, his arms. It's this stunning demonstration of how a growth mindset can literally transform what seems like a fixed, insurmountable reality.
It's about accepting the painful truth of the situation.
Yes, accepting the reality, but then actively working to recreate your reality, stepping out of that dark cave of what was into the light, the potential of what could be.
So, okay, this isn't just about individual stuff like sports or academics, is it? It clearly ripples out into our closest connections, into our relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
If that initial discomfort, that pain of confronting truth, makes us want to retreat to the familiar shadows, how does that play out when it comes to love and partnership? Does it make us cling to comfortable illusions about our partners or even about love itself, instead of facing the complex, sometimes really messy reality of human connection?
You've hit on such a crucial point there. The exact same mindset patterns deeply influence our interpersonal relationships. And they really reflect this fundamental tension between embracing a self-realized truth versus sticking with comforting societal illusions.
How does that show up first?
Well, in a fixed mindset, when relationships hit bumps, or especially if there's rejection, individuals often feel personally judged and permanently labeled. It's like the other person is holding up a mirror that reflects a shadow of themselves they just do not want to see.
That sounds incredibly intense.
It is. In a fixed mindset, rejection isn't just an event like this relationship didn't work out. It's felt as a permanent label, like someone stamped unlovable right on their forehead.
And that leads to?
Often lashing out, a really strong desire for revenge. We saw this in studies where fixed mindset individuals reacted to hypothetical scenarios of rejection by focusing intensely on violent retaliation. They felt their fundamental worth was under attack, and they needed to strike back at whoever made them feel that way.
Wow. But the growth-minded folks?
A stark contrast. They were deeply hurt by rejection too, of course, but their focus was on understanding, forgiveness, and finding a path forward. They viewed the experience, even the pain, as a learning opportunity, not some permanent brand on their worth.
So they might think.
They might say something like, wow, that relationship ending really taught me about the importance of clear communication. I used to think, love conquers all, but now I see it needs a lot of active effort and learning from both sides. Their goal was understanding and personal growth, not vengeance. And that allowed them to move past the immediate pain into the light of new insights.
Beyond just rejection, you mentioned fixed mindset. People often fall for these fallacies.
How about relationships? Yes, two common ones. One is the low effort fallacy. There's this deep belief that if a relationship is right, if you're truly meant to be, it shouldn't require any real effort.
Like magic.
Kind of.
Yeah.
This belief that being in love means never having to do anything taxing. Well, it completely undermines the very thing relationships need to thrive: work. It's a comfortable societal illusion, this idea of effortless connection, but it keeps people from engaging with the real work of building and maintaining intimacy.
And the other fallacy?
Tied closely to it is the mind-reading belief, the idea that my partner should just know what I think, feel, and need instinctively.
Uh-oh. It sounds impossible.
It is impossible, and it leads directly to communication breakdowns and often hostile reactions to even minor differences in views, because any disagreement threatens that illusion of perfect, effortless unity.
So when problems inevitably come up,
fixed mindset individuals tend to jump straight to blame. And specifically, blaming the partner's fixed personality. He's just so irresponsible, she's never serious. This leads to anger, disgust, and this feeling that the problem can't be solved because it's an inherent, unchangeable flaw in the other person.
they label and retreat.
Exactly. Quick to judge, quick to give up.
This often leads to that destructive cycle of judgment you mentioned, like Penelope in your studies.
Yeah.
Ending relationships over tiny things.
Yeah, repeatedly ending relationships over what seemed like incredibly minor flaws. A tacky birthday gift.
Right.
Putting ketchup on the wrong food, things like that. Because she had this fixed mindset, she assumed these weren't just habits, they were unchangeable character problems. Fixed parts of their being, so she couldn't move past them, couldn't allow for growth or change.
Is there a way out of that cycle?
There is. The story of Ted and Karen from Aaron Beck's work is a great illustration. Initially, they were stuck in labeling. Ted saw Karen as flaky, never takes anything seriously. Karen saw Ted as a rigid, judgmental tyrant.
The hum's doomed.
It almost was, but they managed to save their marriage by consciously shifting away from blame and towards helpful actions and support. For example, Ted, instead of scolding Karen when he came home to a messy house, decided to just start cleaning it himself. offering support, not judgment.
That's a huge shift.
It's profound. Moving from rigid judgment to understanding and proactive support, that's absolutely crucial for growth in a relationship. It's like they both chose to step out of their individual caves of blame and meet each other in the light of shared action and understanding.
And you mentioned the Clintons' counseling.
Yeah.
How did mindset play into that?
Well, it revealed how fixed mindsets can enable things like leading dual lives, denial. Bill Clinton, having grown up with alcoholic parents, had learned to compartmentalize, to deny responsibility, a fixed way of coping. Hillary's shift towards a growth mindset, according to the accounts, meant she realized forgiveness alone wasn't enough.
What was needed?
Her partner needed to genuinely want to change, and crucially, take concrete action. Not just be forgiven for who he was perceived to be at some fixed point in time. This whole process helps couples escape those ugly, blame-focused questions like, whose fault is this? And shifts the focus towards shared growth, towards actively cultivating the relationship.
It seems like a fixed mindset can also stir up competition within a relationship.
Oh, definitely. An intense competition sometimes. The subconscious question becomes, who's the smarter one here? Who's more talented, more likable? And in that dynamic, one person's success feels like it inherently diminishes the other.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, Cynthia, from her studies. She would actively, almost compulsively, outdo her partners in their own areas of skill or passion. If a partner loved to cook, Cynthia would suddenly become this phenomenal cook, inventing unbelievable recipes.
Until the partner felt
Completely overshadowed. She left no room for their identity, their development. She eventually drove partners away because she consumed their very passion in her need to be superior.
That's clearly not genuine support.
Not at all. People focused on building their own ego find it incredibly difficult to celebrate someone else's success, especially a partner's, because it feels threatening. It challenges their own sense of superiority. They tend to use others as vehicles for confirming their own worth rather than valuing them for who they are.
Or is true support?
True support means being genuinely glad for your partner's good fortune, celebrating their growth almost as if it were your own. It means being able to accept that your partner's brilliance doesn't dim your own light. It allows both of you to thrive together in the light rather than competing against each other in the shadows. #V. Mindsets in leadership and collective action.
This is really, really illuminating. Okay, so individuals check. Relationships check. How does this scale up even further? Do these mindsets affect entire organizations or even like broader movements? Does that painful journey from illusion, from oppression, maybe towards self-determination, does that mirror this mindset stuff on a collective level?
Absolutely. It scales beautifully, or perhaps dangerously, depending on the mindset. The same dynamics play out on a much larger stage. And they show how an organizational culture, or even a societal one, can either liberate potential or keep it tightly constrained. Much like a society grappling with systemic oppression needs to shift its collective mindset.
How does the fixed mindset show up in organizations?
We frequently see it in what the business researcher Jim Collins called the genius with 1,000 helpers model. You have one person at the top perceived as the genius.
Star.
The star, exactly. And they demand loyalty, they suppress independent thought, they surround themselves with yes men, effectively keeping the entire organization in this static, shadow-like state, resistant to change or real feedback.
Can you think of a big example?
Enron is the prime, devastating example of a company totally undone by a fixed mindset culture. The executives were constantly praised for their innate talent, their brilliance. They refused to admit mistakes, they refused remedial action, and ultimately they resorted to massive, outright lying to protect their inflated image.
Because they couldn't admit they weren't perfect.
They believed they were untouchable stars, who simply shouldn't have to admit failures or weaknesses. And that commitment to their own illusion of brilliance meant they couldn't see the reality crumbling around them until it was too late.
And you see this in specific leaders too, right? Those self-serving types.
Oh, definitely. Leaders like Leah Kaka at Chrysler, or maybe even more extremely, Albert Dunlap Chainsaw Al at Scott Paper and Sunbeam, their focus was intensely on their personal fame, on proving their superstar status. Dunlap literally said, "I'm a superstar in my field. I have to prove and reprove myself."
And the company suffered.
Often, yes. It came at the expense of long-term company health, employee development, honest self-assessment. Because things like employee satisfaction or community responsibility, they weren't good yardsticks for his self-worth. Only the short-term shareholder profits that affirmed his genius mattered. They were busy perpetuating their own shadows.
This kind of fixed mindset leadership, it sounds like it breathes arrogance, maybe intimidation.
It absolutely can. Think of Jerry Levin at Time Warner or Jeffrey Skilling back at Enron. They reportedly used their perceived brilliance and often harsh ridicule to intimidate others. It showed this deep desire to enhance their own power, often at their subordinates' expense.
Surrounding themselves with...
With helpers, yeah. People who would maintain their facade, confirm their existing biases, never challenge them. They didn't actually want the truth, especially uncomfortable truth. They wanted confirmation of their perceived superiority. It just reinforces their own grand illusions.
And this often means they just refuse to adapt.
Yeah.
Even when the writing's on the wall.
Exactly. A profound refusal to adapt. Companies like A&P, which was once the world's largest retailer, just refused to acknowledge the danger signs. They wouldn't adapt to changing markets, choosing instead to just shut their eyes to what they didn't want to hear.
Didn't they shut down a successful experiment?
They did. They actually closed down a more successful superstore model they were testing because the results weren't what they wanted to hear about their traditional business model. This rigid adherence to the old ways, born from a fixed mindset that valued past success over future adaptation, it led straight to their decline. They preferred the familiar shadow over the bright, maybe scary light of innovation.
And then there's groupthink. That sounds like a collective fixed mindset.
It really is. A perilous fixed mindset phenomenon where everyone starts thinking alike, where critical judgment just gets suspended. The disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion under President Kennedy is often cited as an example.
Because everyone thought Kennedy had the Midas touch.
Exactly. There was this uncritical faith in the genius leader. Everyone around him thought he was golden, couldn't lose, and that atmosphere prevented dissenting voices, critical questions about the ill-fated plan from being properly heard or considered. It's a collective illusion, a shared shadow that completely replaces critical thought and objective assessment.
Okay, so that's the grim side. What about growth mindset organizations?
Well, in stark contrast, these organizations, often the ones identified in Jim Collins's Good to Great research, focus on building extraordinary management teams, not relying on a single genius.
Like Darwin Wurtzel at Nucor.
Precisely. He was described as a normal kind of guy. He fostered growth, collective effort. He turned a near-bankrupt company into an industry leader by prioritizing employee development, empowering his workforce, listening to them. This mirrors, in a way, collective liberation movements that seek self-determination by fostering collective potential and critical consciousness, rather than just waiting for a singular, infallible leader.
It's like that idea of a social structure needing to constantly become.
Exactly. That philosophical idea that society or an organization isn't static. It must become. It's always in dynamic transformation, needing to develop to overcome its internal contradictions by seeing them not as fixed barriers, but as untested feasibility, as opportunities for growth.
Transformative leaders really seem to embody this, don't they?
They do. Lou Gerstner, when he took over IBM in the 90s, he found a company absolutely riddled with smugness and elitism. Employees were fighting turf wars instead of working together, clinging to outdated ideas.
How did he change it?
He fundamentally shifted the culture, fostered collaboration, transparency, a deep concern for customers and employees. He even dedicated his book not to himself, but to thousands of IBMers who never gave up, acknowledging their collective effort, their resilience. He basically led them out of their own self-imposed shadows.
And Ann Mulcahy at Xerox. Similar story.
Very similar. She took over Xerox when it was literally on the brink of collapse, deeply in debt, facing obsolescence. She didn't cling to past glory. She put herself into an incredible learning mode. She transformed both herself and the company through this blend of toughness and compassion, and she turned it around, leading to profitable quarters, critical acclaim.
So these growth-minded leaders, what are they doing differently day to day?
They're committed to employee development. They provide actual developmental coaching. They notice improvements. They acknowledge effort. And crucially, they welcome critiques. They demonstrate that abilities can be cultivated at all levels. There are even workshops now, based on brain plasticity research, that can teach managers how to adopt a growth mindset, fundamentally changing their approach from seeing talent as a fixed commodity to seeing it as something to be cultivated.
And this collective growth mindset, it helps fight groupthink.
Actively combats it. Growth-minded leaders like Winston Churchill during World War II actively sought out the worst news. He wanted reality, not false reassurance. He even set up a special department whose only job was to give him all the bad news unfiltered.
Wow.
And companies can do this systematically, implement strategies like assigning official devil's advocates for big decisions, holding structured debates, using anonymous suggestion boxes, anything to foster alternative views and critical thinking, to encourage a culture where challenging the status quo or speaking uncomfortable truths is valued, not punished.
It's about consciously choosing to move beyond those comfortable illusions.
Those collective shadows, yeah, towards a more complex, shared truth, even, and maybe especially, when that truth is difficult to face.
Okay, this whole deep dive feels like a masterclass in how to unlock potential, whether it's in ourselves, our relationships, our companies. So it really makes me wonder, how do we actively foster this kind of thinking, especially in those really foundational places like schools or in sports coaching? How do we actually prepare people to challenge the narratives they've grown up with, to truly embrace learning, even when it's uncomfortable, when it feels like stepping into that blinding light for the first time?
You've really hit on a critical point there, focusing on pedagogy, on critical thinking methodologies. The way we teach, the way we coach can profoundly shape whether individuals learn to embrace that discomfort or just recoil from it, whether they challenge those deeply ingrained societal narratives or just accept them.
How does the fixed mindset creep into education?
Well, in a fixed mindset culture, that underlying belief that some people are just born smart can subtly push everyone else into non-learning. It's a bit like what the philosopher Paulo Freire called the banking concept of education.
Banking concept.
Yeah, where knowledge is just seen as something to be deposited into students by the teacher. It treats students as passive recipients, like empty containers, rather than active creators of their own understanding. And that approach keeps them chained, right? Facing the shadows of what they're told, rather than empowering them to turn around, explore, question, and create for themselves.
So what does growth-oriented teaching look like instead?
Think about the transformative power we see in some educators. Dorothy DeLay, the legendary violin teacher at Juilliard, she fundamentally believed talent was acquired, not inborn.
Even at Juilliard, where talent seems like everything.
Especially there, in a place where that idea of natural genius, that fixed mindset thinking, could easily dominate. She gave her absolute all to every student, even the ones who showed, quote, little promise. She saw a dignity in them, a potential that could be channeled into their playing.
So she didn't just teach technique.
No, she went deeper. She demystified genius. She emphasized breaking down these huge, overwhelming concepts into small, actionable steps. Like teaching Itzhak Perlman, even as a young prodigy, about the beautiful beginning, middle, and end of each individual note. That makes mastery feel attainable through focused effort, not just some magical innate gift.
That's powerful. Any other examples?
Marva Collins, the inner city grade school teacher, another powerhouse example. She took kids labeled unteachable by the system and transformed them into avid readers, critical thinkers. How? By setting extraordinarily high standards and providing unwavering support.
High standards for kids labeled unteachable.
Exactly. By 5th grade, her students were reading Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, challenging works. And they understood her message. There is no magic here. I just love children and work harder than a lot of people, and so will you. Her whole approach was about demanding effort, but also providing the scaffolding, the belief needed for growth, not assuming fixed abilities, not accepting those societal shadows of low expectations.
And Rafe Esquith, similar approach.
Very similar. Another inner-city 5th grade teacher whose students master incredibly complex reading lists nail the basic fundamentals. They often work before school, after school, even during vacations. His motto, there are no shortcuts.
He's not just teaching them facts, though.
No, that's the key. He champions teaching them to eventually learn and think for themselves. That goes way beyond just acquiring content. It's about fostering true critical thinking, the ability to navigate discomfort, to question the narratives they're given, to take responsibility for their own intellectual journey out of the cave.
You mentioned a program called Brainology. What's that about?
Ah, yes. Brainology is a profoundly impactful example. It's an interventional program that explicitly teaches students that their brain isn't fixed. It tells them their brain forms new connections, it literally grows when they learn new things. It directly links effort and learning to physical changes in the brain.
And kids responded to that.
Amazingly well. Suddenly, students started actively talking about their neurons growing bigger. They became more determined to do the hard work specifically to make those neural connections. It fundamentally changed their perception of learning. It wasn't about fixed ability anymore. It was an active, dynamic process they controlled. It prepared them to challenge their own perceived limits, to push past those limit situations and see them as untested feasibility potential waiting to be unlocked.
Okay, switching to coaching. How did someone like Bobby Knight, the famous basketball coach, fit into this? He seemed to believe in player development, but his style was different.
It's a really fascinating contrast. Bobby Knight, yes, he believed players could develop their skills, but he seemed to operate with a pretty fixed mindset about his own coaching ability and maybe about character.
How did that play out?
He motivated largely through intimidation, ridicule. He viewed the team's performance, their wins and losses, as a direct reflection of his personal competence, his genius. This reportedly led to player breakdowns, intense resentment. His own best student apparently considered shooting him at one point.
Whoa.
Yeah. His methods might have brought wins, sure, but often at a profound human cost, because he couldn't easily see himself or maybe even his players as part of a dynamic learning system. He was always, in a sense, proving his fixed genius. His fixed way was the right way.
So how did growth-minded coaches differ, like John Wooden?
John Wooden, the legendary UCLA coach. A total contrast. He focused relentlessly on analyzing performance, yes, but also on motivating players to fulfill their potential not just in basketball, but in life. His whole philosophy centered on mastery, on consistent effort. You have to apply yourself to be your best, was his mantra.
Winning wasn't the only goal.
Winning was a byproduct, not the ultimate goal. He was less concerned with the final score and more with helping each player become their best self, on and off the court. His players consistently described him as a life coach. And his methods. Unparalleled success in terms of championships, yes, but also incredibly positive long-term life outcomes for his athletes.
And Pat Summitt, the women's coach.
Pat Summitt at Tennessee, another great example. She initially really struggled with losing early in her career, but she evolved. She came to see success as the enemy because it could lead to complacency, stagnation.
So she embraced losing.
She learned to embrace losing, or rather, the lessons from losing. She saw it as a catalyst, something that forced everyone, including herself, to develop a more complete game to keep growing. They both, Wooden and Summitt, fostered these cultures of relentless self-improvement. It mirrors that journey to self-realization by constantly pushing into the light of what's possible next.
This growth mindset also seems crucial for dealing with stereotypes, right?
Absolutely crucial. Fixed mindsets make people incredibly vulnerable to stereotypes. Think about common ones. Women in math, minorities in college. If you have a fixed mindset, those negative labels can just invade your thinking and define you. They can lead to what's called a shrinking sense of belonging.
You start to believe the stereotype yourself.
Exactly. You internalize that societal illusion. You let the shadows of others' judgments define your reality and limit what you think you can do.
But a growth mindset protects against that.
It provides powerful protection. It allows individuals to use and develop their minds fully, even when they're targeted by stereotypes. We saw this with female math students in one study. Faced with subtle stereotyping from an instructor, they didn't internalize it.
What did they do?
They maintained their comfort and confidence by working together, supporting each other. They understood that the stereotyping reflected poorly on the instructor, not on their own abilities. They discussed their interesting ideas among themselves, effectively building this counter-narrative to the fixed mindset judgment. They created their own reality of competence.
Interesting point about boys maybe getting more criticism.
Yeah, it's a provocative observation from some studies. The idea is that perhaps because boys tend to receive more direct criticism overall, they might become, on average, a bit less defined by external judgments, more resilient to others' assessments. And that resilience, that ability to separate feedback from identity, is absolutely key. It's key to embracing a complex, self-realized truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges those deeply ingrained societal narratives you've been fed.
Okay, this has been such a powerful deep dive. Seriously.
Yeah.
It shows how these mindsets, fixed or growth, shape pretty much everything. Individual achievement, relationships, even whole organizations. So for someone listening right now, maybe recognizing aspects of that fixed mindset in themselves, what's the path forward? How do we actually make that journey? How do we get out of the cave and into that, often painful, but ultimately liberating light of self-realization?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we genuinely cultivate a growth mindset? Because it's not about just saying, okay, I have a growth mindset now.
Right, not just flipping a switch.
No,
But
it's about embarking on a continuous conscious journey. And the first step, maybe the most important one, is simply acknowledging that everyone has both mindsets. You, me, everyone listening, we all possess both fixed and growth mindsets. No one is purely one or the other.
that's actually kind of comforting.
It is. We all have moments where we retreat to those familiar shadows, where our ego tries to protect this perceived fixed self. So acceptance first.
Okay, step 1, accept we all have both. What's next?
Step 2 is to become acutely aware of your triggers. What specific situations tend to activate your fixed mindset persona?
Like what kind of situations?
It could be when you're taking on a big new challenge, that internal voice pipes up whispering, maybe you don't actually have what it takes for this. Or maybe it's when you're struggling, really hitting dead ends on something important, and the voice suggests, just give it up. This is just making you feel frustrated and ashamed.
Yeah, I recognize that voice. What else?
It could be experiencing a decisive failure, losing a job, a cherished relationship ending, falling short on a major goal. That's when the fixed mindset can roar. See, you're not the person you thought you were, and you never will be.
Ouch.
Even just encountering someone who's significantly better than you in an area you pride yourself on can trigger it, leading to thoughts like, wow, I'll never be that good, or maybe even a subtle resentment towards that person. And we also need to catch ourselves when we project fixed judgments onto others.
Like judging kids based on grades.
Exactly. Or judging colleagues after a high-stakes test or a big project. When we pressure kids based only on grades, we inadvertently foster fixed mindsets in them.
Right.
We subtly communicate that their worth is fixed, determined by the outcome, not the process or the effort.
Okay, so identify the triggers. Then what? Step 3.
Step 3 is where it gets kind of interesting, maybe even a little fun, and surprisingly effective. Name your fixed mindset persona.
Give it a name, like a character.
Yeah, giving this internal voice, this collection of fixed mindset thoughts and feelings, a name can help externalize it. It makes it easier to observe it, manage it, rather than just being consumed by it. We've heard great examples from people. Like Gertrude, described as this cagey, histrionic, self-aggrandizing persona who insists on unwavering natural strength and absolutely detests hard work. Or Henrietta, the critical grandmother, who constantly blames others and rejects any hint of failure just to preserve her ego.
Huh. Okay, I can picture those.
Right. Or Z, the persona who just screams stupid, stupid, stupid internally after a rejection, especially if a roommate succeeds with seemingly less effort. Or Dale Denton, named after a movie character, this lazy, bumbling slob persona who produces a constant stream of doubt-provoking statements designed purely to keep you from trying new things.
So naming it creates distance.
Exactly. It creates separation. It allows you to interact with that part of yourself instead of just being that part of yourself. It's about taking back control of that internal monologue that's often desperately trying to keep you safe in the cave, trying to convince you the shadows are safer, more comfortable than the light.
Okay, so we have both. Identify triggers, name the persona. Now what? Argue with Gertrude.
Maybe not argue, but you can learn to interact with your persona. Educate it even. Invite it. Maybe reluctantly at first, to join you on your growth journey. But the key here, the really practical step, is moving beyond just intense vowing, I swear I'll be more growth-minded.
Which usually doesn't last.
Right. Instead, you need to make vivid, concrete plans. Psychologists call these implementation intentions.
Meaning,
Instead of a vague goal like, I'll call the graduate school, you get super specific. Tomorrow, during my coffee break at 10:30 a.m., I will sit down at my kitchen table, look up the number for the graduate school admissions office, call them, and ask for specific feedback on my application. See the difference?
yeah, it's detailed, it's actionable.
These plans visualize when, where, and how you will carry out a specific growth-minded action. And research shows this significantly increases the chances you'll actually follow through. It transforms those fuzzy intentions into concrete, manageable steps on the journey.
But what if you still feel bad, like failure still stings?
That's crucial.
Yeah.
It's absolutely vital to understand that shifting to a growth mindset doesn't mean you suddenly won't feel discomfort or frustration or sadness. You absolutely can still feel miserable after a setback. People describe having vivid dreams of loss or rejection, even while consciously choosing growth.
So the feelings don't magically disappear.
No. But the key is realizing that your internal experience of distress is actually irrelevant to your decision to learn and improve. You can consciously choose to feel bad, but do good. You acknowledge the hurt, the fear, the frustration, but you take the growth-oriented action anyway, knowing that stepping into the light of growth is ultimately worth that initial discomfort.
Okay, so it's about action despite feelings. How can we apply this to transform challenging situations?
By consciously reframing them. For instance, instead of seeing a new job, maybe one at a lower level than you expected, as an insult to your talent or a step backward, reframe it. See it as a profound learning opportunity, a chance to understand the company from top to bottom, inside out. That kind of deep knowledge provides a massive advantage for future growth, right? Like those top growth mindset CEOs we talked about, they knew their companies intimately before they led them to greatness.
So look for the learning opportunity.
Always. Or think about difficult colleagues or maybe a tough boss. Instead of seeing them as fixed adversaries, try seeing them as opportunities. Opportunities to practice building relationships, maybe even help them develop somehow. It transforms perceived competition into potential collaboration. A bit like Bill Murray's character in Groundhog Day, right? He shifted from cynical contempt to genuine engagement and self-improvement. And in doing so, he transformed his entire reality.
That's a great analogy. And in relationships.
Same principle. Relationship challenges, like maybe a spouse expressing unmet needs. Instead of hearing it as a criticism of your fixed personality, you're just not romantic. Try reframing it. See it as an opportunity to explore your own fears, maybe learn new communication skills, deepen the intimacy. It's about recognizing that problems aren't fixed barriers. They're dynamic opportunities for both personal and relational growth. They're invitations to step out of your personal shadow and consciously co-create a brighter, more authentic shared reality together.
What an incredible journey we've taken together. It really does reshape how you think about, well, everything, what it means to succeed, to connect, even just to grow as a person. This idea that our potential isn't some fixed thing we're stuck with,
right,
but something that actually flowers over time with passion and toil and training. It's truly transformative. It feels like moving from just being passively in the world, a spectator, accepting the shadows as reality, to being actively with the world, a recreator of your own reality, someone who's actually shaping it with effort and perspective.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, what it really means is that instead of being defined by our limitations or our past failures, or what the shadows on the wall tell us we are, we have this profound inherent capacity, the capacity to develop, to adapt, to continually become more of who we aspire to be.
It encourages us to look beyond just the immediate outcome.
Exactly. And to embrace the whole process of learning, the journey itself, both for ourselves and for the people around us. This fundamental idea of becoming rather than just being is so central to fulfilling our deepest potential. It's about pushing past those perceived limit situations, those walls we think are solid, and starting to explore the untested feasibility of true self-determination, true liberation. It really challenges you to consider, if your potential isn't fixed, what uncomfortable truth might you still be avoiding, and what amazing reality might be waiting for you just beyond the perceived safety of your own personal shadows.